Hi, I'm Rob, and today we're at the White Swan in Mansbridge. The White Swan sits in a lovely position. It's right on the banks of the River Itchen, and it's a very, very popular pub for local people, especially for Sunday roasts. Anyway, it was built in the early 19th century, and it was originally called the Middleton Arms. It's called the Middleton Arms because there was a family living in a big house nearby, of which I will tell you more later. They owned the land, so his name was Middleton, so the pub was the Middleton Arms. 1830 it changed to the Swan Inn, and in 1870 it became the White Swan Hotel, and it's still the White Swan now. As you can see, someone's put in the worst extension ever on the front of the pub, completely ruined the looks, but anyway. We're going to walk up past that, along this tarmac track, which was once the main road into Portsmouth, the A27. Once the pub had a nice garden out the back. It's taken up now by extensions and flood defences. And there used to be a wooden bridge that you could cross to go over to the island on the other side. That all disappeared. I think it was sort of mid to late 60s. I think the bridge became rotten and the garden needed to go because the pub is frequently flooded, unfortunately. The A27 here, the old road, is better tarmac than some of the new stretches. They're going to carry on to walk under the concrete bridge there. That's the new Mansbridge. That was built in 1975 when the A27 was diverted a few yards further from the pub. And we cross over the old Mansbridge. Now, there's been a bridge here recorded at Mansbridge since the Charter of King Athelstan in 932 AD. This one was built in 1816 and was decommissioned, if you like, in 1975 when the A27 was bypassed from there across this new concrete Mansbridge. As a kid, I remember the horrendous traffic jams. All the traffic going along the main South Coast Road, the A27, came here to almost a right angle bend, and then this tiny narrow little bridge, and cars queued either side for miles. And this is what a lot of the land around the river was. It was sort of marshy scrubland. Anyway, at this point we're going to take this well-trodden path off to the left. That leads us out onto this lovely wild space. We pass the Octavia Road Children's Play Area and just catch the edge of the Monk's Way Council Estate. And we follow on ahead down the concretey gravel path. And we're going to cross this bridge over the Monk's Brook. Now, the Monk's Brook is a tributary of the River Itchen. It rises at Bucket's Corner, which is between Charnesford and North Baddesley. And it runs down through Charnesford, through Eastleigh, through Fleming Park, along under the motorway, and it empties out into the tidal stretch of the Itchen, just up at Woodmill. And our path emerges into St Mary's Close and the graveyard of St Mary's or South Stoneham Church. Now let's take a look, see if it's open. Unfortunately, the sign on the door isn't correct and it's locked. And we've got the Scout Hut for the 26th Southampton Swaveling Pack. Well, St Mary's is 12th century with a 15th century tower and other additions. One of only two medieval churches left in Southampton. There's St Mary's here, and there's also St Michael and All Angels, which is in the city centre. Now, a funny story about this is the family that lived in South Stoneham House, the Dummers. Of course, their burials are in the crypt in the church, but the church is so close to the river that the water level rises under the ground, and the congregation complained that they could hear the Dummers rattling about in the crypt. So the crypt was actually filled in the 1960s. Now, it's a shame we can't go in because there's a very, very rare piece inside this church. It's a dumb organist, and that's a device that sits over the keyboard of the organ, and so the organ can kind of play itself. It's only one of three still in existence, so that would have been something to see, but to say it's not open. Of course, this church isn't to be confused with the one-hand clock variety at North Stoneham. That's actually in Eastleigh. It's also medieval. Anyway, we continue out St Mary's Close, and we're going to turn left into Wessex Lane. So this building on the right is the Connaught Halls of Residence. I believe there's a gym there as well. And we've turned left into Wessex Lane, and this area is pretty much all student accommodation. Now, this is South Stoneham House. That's also owned by the university, although there's been a lot of controversy about what's going to happen to it. They're demolishing a lot of the 1960s student accommodation. But I think it's going to be retained. It's historically of too much importance to the area. But what they're going to do with it, we don't know. Anyway, it was built in 1708. It's Grade 2 listed, and it was occupied by the Barons of Swaveling. It was also occupied by the University School of Navigation, which trained sailors in the sort of mid-20th century. Willis Fleming's also lived here for a while, as well as at the North Stoneham House and Chilworth Manor. So for the alumni of Southampton University that were in these halls in the 60s, 70s and 80s, possibly even the 90s, they're coming down eventually. Junction of Wessex Lane and Woodmill Lane, we're going to turn left. I was just talking to one of the demolition crew, and they expect to have that whole building down by the end of June. You can just get a glimpse at the back of South Stoneham House of the Towtow cedars that are a dead giveaway that it's a Capability Brown designed garden. And it stretches down to the river, to the salmon pool, and the lands would have gone all the way to Eastleigh in one direction and all the way up to the Bargate in Southampton in the other. Now, over the fence is the salmon pool, which you won't be able to see unless you're very tall. And here's Woodmill, which is an outdoor activity centre. It was a mill built of wood. In fact, there were two wooden mills on this site, but they would keep burning down, which isn't good. They milled corn, which of course the millstones get very hot, and then there's the dust, which is a fire risk as well from the flour. So in 1824 it was rebuilt in brick. It closed in 1954. So Woodmill and this sluice mark the tidal limit of the River Itchen. So it's tidal on this side, but we're going to cross the road through what would have been Woodmill Lock to follow Riverside Park on the freshwater side. Woodmill Lock has been filled in, but this would have been the entrance here, and the barges would have then crossed over where the road and the grass is now and emerged on the tidal side. Up until this point they could have been horse-drawn, but on the other side there's no towpath, so they would have to have gone with the tide or sailed. This is probably the only bit of the river that you can navigate without any complaint from fishermen or anybody else. And by navigate I mean, you know, kayak or rowing boat or whatever. Hello ducks. And that's Woodmill Activity Centre, on the other side, big climbing frames and things. So speaking of boats and navigation, when I was a kid I lived over at Eastleigh in the lost village of Middle, which was lost even then. Basically it's sort of off Chestnut Avenue. There's a video about it if you want to catch up with it. Middle, the Forgotten Village or something I've called it. Anyway, my dad worked over the airport and he brought home one day a bright orange RAF rescue dinghy. It had been thrown out. The reason it had been thrown out is because there was a split in the keel underneath, and we tried all sorts of things, araldite and goodness knows what sort of glues to try and fix it, but it never worked properly. But anyway, we used to pump it up, hoik it onto our heads and walk from Eastleigh up to here to go rowing on the river. We had to stop several times on the way. It had some bellows built into it, so we stopped by the side of the road and pumped the blooming thing up. Anyway, it's usually me and Andy Purchase, generally speaking. Might have been some other mates that came along with me. But anyway, we didn't realise that there were some ne'er-do-wells that live not far from here. So we got the dinghy, I'm rowing it down the river, Andy's pumping. Of course we're making a bit of a spectacle of ourselves. Attracts the attentions of the ne'er-do-wells from a council estate just over there, and they used to come and throw bricks at us. I've not seen anyone doing that for a while, so perhaps the kids have improved round here, I don't know. But happy memories, mainly because a brick didn't hit us. Bounced off the rubber, boing. Didn't hit us though, thankfully. Anyway, I'll never forget that old dinghy. And lovely geese. Riverside Park proper is over the other side of the road at Woodmill. This is still sort of Riverside Park, but it's a rougher bit, a more natural bit. Anyway, this land was all boggy wetwood originally, all the way up to Cobden Bridge. But between the wars, Southampton Corporation did a lot of things between the wars. Southampton Corporation, they made the sports centre over at Bassett there, but they also decided they wanted a park this side of the city as well, so they infilled all the marsh and the wetwood and they made two lovely parks, one side up towards Cobden Bridge from Woodmill and the other down here. I say they made it, it wasn't actually completed until the mid-60s. I think the war got in the way, but yeah, it's nice. It's a nice asset for the people of Southampton and also for the people of Eastleigh that want to stick a dinghy on their head and come walking up here. Some of them do the modern equivalent and bring a kayak. In fact, I've done that myself and promptly ditched myself in the water. I'm going to have to learn to kayak properly or get rid of it, one of the two. Anyway, onward. And there's a moorhen. Remember the difference? Yep, moorhen's got red over the beak, i.e. little red hen, moorhen, as opposed to coots that have got white. Ah, someone's been feeding the ducks. Seagulls are quick to capitalise on that. So we're back at Mansbridge again, and Mansbridge is one of only two of the original bridges left on the Itchen navigation. The other one is at Wharf Hill in Winchester. It's Wharf Bridge actually. I think the level of the canal must have been kept a lot lower in those days when it was being used, because you'd have a job to get a canal boat under that arch. Anyway, this is a figure of 8 walk, so you can either head back under the concrete bridge and head home after a short walk, or continue with me, and we're going to turn right to walk under the concrete bridge towards the reservoir. So I keep following the gravel path. Still some ne'er-do-wells about them. And at this point we just keep right-handed. So you can divert left and have a little walk around the reservoir if you're minded to. But our path continues through this kissing gate along the boardwalk. And we'll walk alongside the old navigation. And you can still see the engineering works for the old Mansbridge lock. There's one of the landing lights for Eastleigh Airport, or Southampton International if you prefer to call it that. Unbelievably, only 6 barges ever worked this canal, which went from Southampton to Winchester. Those 6 barges carried about 20 or 30 tonnes each. So never the most successful canal, and then the railway came along, virtually built alongside of it, and that was the end of the canal. But it's left us these lovely towpaths and things to walk on. There's the reason for the constant drone. That's the M27. Now that replaced the A27 really between the New Forest and Portsmouth, and then it picks up the A27 again further into Sussex. But can you imagine if that hadn't been built, the amount of traffic that would be coming over that bridge and along the A27 now through Southampton? It would be remarkable. This was the final stretch to be built, between junction 4 and I believe junction 8, and that was completed in 1983, and in about 1981 I was on a run and I didn't realise that I couldn't get across it, so I just went across the muddy works and got stuck up to my knees in mud. Anyway, we continue down the side of this because the path since 1983 has been diverted down and to go back again to pick up the Itchen Way. Now this land to the right is also Itchen Valley Country Park, but it's kind of locked off from the rest of the country park by the motorway. It's owned by Eastleigh Borough Council, very much the wild part of the country park. A little bit of light rain starting to come down now, so we're going under the motorway, and I might just pause there for a bit in the dry. Typical weather forecast. It's supposed to be a sunny, cloudy morning, and a bit cloudier this afternoon, but certainly no rain, but we've got it. Now that's the main channel of the River Itchen that goes down into the country park. The left when you come out under the bridge, and then you've got this kissing gate which takes you into the Itchen Valley Country Park alongside the river. Now there are cattle grazing here sometimes, so dogs on a lead on this bit, tempting though it is to let your dog off for a little bit of a run. Thankfully they put in little boardwalks here and there to save us from the worst of the mud, but you'll notice I am wearing wellies today, as these Watermeadows can get quite muddy. So the country park, it covers 440 acres, and it was opened by Eastleigh Borough Council in 1979. Now Watermeadows are very, very old form of park, and what they've got ditches that run through the fields that join up to the river, and they've got sluices, and during the winter the sluices could be opened so the water flooded the fields, rich nutrients, lots of moisture, good for the grass. So in the spring the grass would come up fresh and sweet, just right for grazing animals. Now this area could have looked very, very different if plans during the 1930s were to have gone ahead. the days between the wars, the future of aviation looked like it was going to be flying boats, because there's water just about everywhere, so you could land a plane wherever. Now Southampton was keen to have a more stable area for flying boats to land. They landed at Calshot, but of course they were subject to the vagaries of the tides and the weathers. So a plan was conceived to flood all these Watermeadows, which are just to the east of Eastleigh Airport, to allow for a flying boat, like landing lagoon if you like. They were quite serious about this, and talks were quite advanced about what they were going to do. But the Second World War then came along, and of course the Second World War meant that tons and tons of concrete were laid for runways and taxiways and things, various airfields all over the place. So the future was no longer flying boats, it was aircraft with wheels. So it never came about. But Eastleigh Aerodrome did develop. They got a concrete runway and became Southampton International, which until a couple of years ago was quite busy. Unfortunately they put all their eggs in one basket pretty much with Flybe, and they've been fairly quiet since. But there is a plan to extend the runway, which is going through the courts at the moment in the planning system. Would allow them to get larger planes in to fly further. So we make use of these little bridges to get us over the ditches. You come across these signs and you follow them, and the vehicle tracks as well, then you shouldn't go too far adrift. Wander off, think you can take a shortcut, and you'll end up in one of the ditches up to your neck in water. Bishopstoke lies that way, and we're keeping the river as close as we can to the right, and through the trees you can see the bridge onto the main country park site. And there we are. Banks of the Itchen through the nature reserve, the country park, are privately owned by angling societies, so you can't walk actually alongside the river. And the track rises up from the river until you reach the visitor centre, and there are lots and lots of picnic benches. For a picnic there's a cafe in there, you can get light snacks and a coffee, toilets, kids play park, and it's always fun watching the windmill go round. There's a clever idea there, it's a dog wash. Jet wash your dog. Lots of woodland trails, lots of open areas as well. Very nice area to visit. But we continue down the side of the barn, and we're going to leave the country park. There is a very good kids play area and a go ape if you turn left, but that's really if you want to come along to the park for a day with your kids. That's part of the walk. I think the cafe and the toilets is enough. Anyway, coming out to the country park. There's car parking down there if you want to pay a day visit. And we're heading out back onto Allington Lane down the main drag. And at the entrance to the park on Allington Lane, we are going to turn right. That's worth remembering if you're in the market. So we're on the road bridge over the M27 in Allington Lane. And I'm going to solve the mystery of the M27 for you. There's a missing junction, junction 6. And this is where it would have been in Allington Lane. And the story of the M27 is when it was first conceived, they were going to put sub-motorways off it. So from junction 3 you've got the M271 and that leads down into Millbrook. That was built. Junction 5 you would have had the M272 and that would lead down along the railway into Southampton, much like the current bypass road does now. From here, the Allington Lane road bridge, there would have been a junction here and another motorway, the M273, which would have led off towards Bitton. Then there's the M274, which would have led from junction, I think it's 10, into Fareham. And then of course you've got the M275 at junction 12 that runs down into Portsmouth. So that's why there's a missing junction number and why there's an M271 and an M275 and nothing in between. Well, I hope that's cleared up the mystery for you. And at the junction of Allington Lane and Swaveling Road, we're going to turn right to head down Gators Hill. Now there's a clue from the sign. This car sales place was indeed originally an old blacksmith's forge. You can just about still make out on this wall the slogan "Long live Dubcek," and that refers to Alexander Dubcek. He was first secretary to the Communist Party in Czechoslovakia, and I think Brezhnev called him our Sasha. But during the Prague Spring uprisings, he wanted reforms to the Communist Party. That led to the invasion by the Russians in 1968 to quell the uprising. So it's a bit of 20th century history for you. Free Dubcek, long live Dubcek. And you'll see that on the corner of Rommel Close. Rommel Close is actually the end of Allington Lane, which joins up with Swaveling Road at Gators Mill. It's now cut off by the motorway, and the new road that we walk down is the way to go now. This is just a close now, but there you go, it was Allington Lane. And on the other side of the road is Cutbush Lane. Now Cutbush Lane leads into the Townhill Park Council estate eventually, but Townhill Park was once a country estate with the Townhill Park mansion there, Townhill Park House. Townhill Park House is Grade 2 listed, built in 1787 for Nathaniel Middleton. You remember the Middleton Arms, the White Swan, the Middleton Arms? That was the chap that owned all the land, Nathaniel Middleton. It's later owned by a family called Gators, and they gave their name to Gators Hill and Gators Mill. And in 1994 it was taken over by the Gregg School, and it's still the Gregg School now. But it's up the lane to the right if you want to have a look, but we're carrying on down the road to continue our route. Quite appropriately, we have the Haskins Garden Centre to our left, as it stands on part of the grounds of Townhill Park House. And the gardens were wonderful and were designed by Gertrude Jekyll. I think she'd probably approve of a garden centre being on part of her land. And keep on the pavement to the left going down Gators Hill. Still very busy road. This is Gators Mill. Stands on the Itchen. Used to be a corn mill. It's now offices, but there's been a mill here since the 13th century. Also milled paper as well at one time, and it's been variously called Gators Mill, which it is now, South Stoneham Mill, Up Mill, Mansbridge Mill, and also West End Mill. During World War II it was used as a munitions store, and there was a big explosion which led to a bit of rebuilding. And they don't have much luck in world wars as well, because during 1916, 1917, which of course is during the First World War, there was another fire there. But as I say, it's quite peaceful now. I think there's some housing there and some offices there. But it's a pretty little place. I've just come past the private sign on the bridge. I'm going no further because it is a private residence. But it's a lovely situation here. Albeit the motorway's a bit loud. Now we've crossed over to follow the line of the old road. And there's a Southampton city boundary stone. We've got the gas man and the dray turned up. It's all going on here today. So there we are. That was a very historic, lovely riverside walk. Riverside Park, Country Park, big houses. This was a very nice place to live at one time for the gentry. It was about 4 3/4 miles. You can link it in with the day at the country park. We can just visit the country park and take the kids on Go Ape or whatever. It's just a good area for a good day out walk or whatever. Anyway, if you enjoyed that walk, then please like and subscribe, and I'll maybe see you on the next one. But until then, I'm going in to get myself a nice hot cup of coffee, because we had a bit of rain and the wind's a bit chilly, so I'm ready for a warm drink. Come along with me. So in place of the grass garden and the bridge, we do still have a patio by the river. Very pleasant. It's very much set up for dining. Very nice pub. A little private quiet bit. It's almost like separate rooms. So I found myself a nice leather sofa beneath the Queen Elizabeth. Might be Queen Mary. I'll tell you a closer look. Look at that. Nice. Yeah, it was the Queen Elizabeth.